Oh, well, y'all already back? Well, welcome, friends and family, to the old country kitchen again. Glad y'all could stop on by again. Now, as you know, we sort of kind of gave you a preview on the last video of what we were going to be up to cooking today. And we left it where you could guess and tell old Mr. Tom what you thought it would be. Now, that being said, many of y'all guessed part of it. Danced all around it, as my mother would have said. But two of you got it exactly right. And I think that was because of one of the main clues I gave. Something about a story that goes with what we're making today. But many of y'all said chicken soup, chicken stew. Well, yeah, could have well been. Some said chicken gumbo. Yep. And another popular one was chicken pot pie, which made me think I ain't made them in forever. Maybe I'll have to do that. I just ain't making the dough, but I could. But with just me, seems a lot of work to go to. But anyway, if I'd have showed y'all the secret ingredient, you would have known right from the get-go. Because I know this story about what we're about to prepare, like I said, goes all the way back to my early childhood. In fact, I can remember the very first time I was read that story. That was by my great-grandmother Westerberg, up in Johnsonburg, Pennsylvania, up on the steep slopes of the mountainsides, looking down into the river valley. Yep. That was the very first time. And I would also hear the story again in elementary school. And the story isn't so much about the recipe, because there are so many versions of the story as well as the recipe that it's hard to keep track of. But the very first version, or what's considered the original since it's the oldest that can be found, was actually written in 1732, if you can believe that, in France by a Madame de Noyer. She was French as well. But in her version, there were two Jesuits. Yep. But then, the most popular version, and what's been rewritten the most, was another version by another Frenchman in France called Philip Barbie. In his version, he rewrote in 1771. So, that may give you a hint right now to what we got going on. But, like I say, we're going to go through the ingredients here real fast, show them all to you, and then we're going to show you the secret ingredient. And then all of y'all will know just exactly what we're cooking up today. And why. And why it's so important today in these times. So, let's get to it. Right here in the Deep South Country Kitchen. So, just like I showed you on the last video, we got our secret ingredient here hidden under this towel, and we'll go over it last. But you're going to need some chicken, but you don't have to use chicken. You could use salted beef, which goes back to the story, because that's what was actually used, according to the people who wrote it, in the original version of what we're cooking. And we've got a half head of cabbage, a couple of carrots here, right here. We got our potatoes. I believe we got 5 of them. Got some nice medium to large size onion. Some fresh garlic, we do. Some ginger that many of y'all said looked like a horse or a donkey. That wasn't on purpose, it's just the way it grew. And like I told you, the other ingredient we're going to be using was some frozen green beans that we grew in the garden. So I went ahead and drug them out of the freezer just to show you. And then, like I say, we got to season it all up, don't we? So we're going to need some ground black pepper, some celery seed. Now normally I'd use a couple stalks of celery, but I happen to be a little bit out on that at the moment, so we'll be using celery seed today. We're going to be using poultry seasoning. Oh yeah, since we're using chicken. We got us some rosemary right here. Salt, of course. We'll also be adding in some stewed tomatoes, some mushrooms. These are whole. We'll slice them on up. And some crushed red pepper to add just a touch of heat to warm us up on these cold winter days. And you can need some chicken broth. Now you might wonder, if we're cooking up some chicken, why we need some more broth. Well, we got it on standby just in case we need it. Or we could use chicken bouillon cubes. Always remember, it's 1 chicken bouillon cube per 8 ounces of water. Yep, sure is. So there you have it. But once you know what the secret ingredient is and what we're actually cooking, you'll understand why many of y'all's suggestions about what's under this towel could actually be added to this dish. Yep, some said there was okra under here. Others said bay leaf. Some said rice, noodles, and the list went on and on and on. But let me show you just what the ingredient is. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Drum roll, please. Yep, right there. You're probably saying, what are those? Well, those are actually stones. River stones they are. So now you probably get it. Yes, my friends and family, this is stone soup. And that's what we're making. But like I said, it could include anything and everything you have on hand. Even the meat doesn't matter. Because the original story had salted beef. And like I say, there's so many versions of the story, down to differences in the main characters. You know, the original story had 2 Jesuit priests that were traveling, that were hungry, and had no food. In the next version, it was a tramp or traveler. Some versions say soldiers. Others say beggars and hobos. But it doesn't matter. You see, it was this ingredient right here that started the story off. And if you're not familiar with the story, you might want to look it up here on YouTube. And there are videos where they read it to you. And the very first time I ever did this was with my own children. I used to read to them all the time when they were just wee things. And I read them the story of the stone soup. And they loved it. Because it teaches a moral about what people can do when they all come together and share a little bit into making something better. And so the story goes that the traveler came to a village. Without food, he was hungry. And he asked the villagers if they had any food they could spare. But they had none. And they said their children were starving. And they wished they could help. So this traveler made a fire he got out his cooking pot, filled it with water, and he took out a nice stone. Not sure what size. Some say it was a large one. Of course, in reality, you could use one much larger than this, or several small ones. These are colorful, and I like them. But once I read that story to the children, they couldn't wait till the coming weekend to go out and find the perfect stone. So this makes a great story to tell your children or your grandchildren. I think you'll be surprised too. They'll want to go looking for stones. Now, you don't want to use a sandstone. It's got to be a hard stone. And you're going to want to wash them up really nice. You want nice clean stone or stones. I use multiple ones because it reminds me of what the children did. They found every beautiful stone they could find. And of course we had to use them all, because they said it just makes the soup so much more better. And what you might not know, people have actually studied this and have shown that there is some benefit to putting in certain type stones that are made up of different things, even from different areas, that do infuse the broth with certain minerals. Yep. It's hard to believe people have actually studied stone soup. But then what the traveler did, once he got his water hot and boiling, he put that stone in. And then he started raving about just how good stone soup was. But then he went on to say about a time when he had stone soup with cabbage. And sure enough, a villager came out with a small cabbage. And then he raved again a little later on about how he had had some stone soup one time that also had salted beef in it, and it was fit for a king. So the local butcher came out with a slab of just that, salted beef. And I would have used that to remain traditional, but I'm slap out with salted beef. But as the story goes, he continued to rave about additional ingredients put into the stone soup that made it all the more better. And one by one the villagers brought out a little bit of what they had. Some carrots, some potatoes, onion, garlic. And I think if they would have had some, they would have brought some ginger, but I add this in just for the health benefits. And of course, is what I'm sure, even though the story doesn't outline it or even talk about it, now one version has mushrooms and that. Another version has tomatoes. But the seasoning's sort of left out of the mix. And it doesn't talk about chicken broth, but you might say this is the modern version of stone soup. And another villager brought out some green beans. But there are so many recipes for this soup, and all of y'all brought up some great suggestions. Yeah, we could throw some okra in it. Some said add turmeric. Oh yeah, that'd be great too. And just think about it. In this day and age, with our pandemic, it might come to that point where we will all have to band together and add to the soup to feed our communities and feed our neighborhoods. And that's what exactly happened that day. All the people said they had no food and they were starving. But once everybody contributed to the pot, a fine soup was made that fed the entire village. And that's the moral of the story. When each one shares, then all can benefit. At least that's what I got from it. And I'm not going to read the story, but I do suggest you look it up online, you read it, or you listen to it here on YouTube. If I find one, I'll leave a link down below the description. Of course, like always, you're going to need measuring spoons, nice sharp chef's knife. Yep, you know, nice big pot. And yeah, when I make this up, I make up enough to eat for several days. It's just the way of it. Yeah, I cook for an army, and it's hard to break the habit. But what we're going to do now, the first thing we got to get doing, is fill that old pot up with some water. We got to place our stones in it and get it up to a boil. And then we're going to be adding this chicken. So hang on in there with me. Y'all take a seat in the dining room, and I'll show you how to put it all together and get her all done. So y'all, the first thing we got to do is we had to fill up our nice big pot here with some filtered water. You could use bottled water, or you know, if you're fortunate enough to have a spring or a well, that'll all be good and fine too. And then what we got to do is we got to put our stones in there. We got stones right here. Now I just wouldn't throw them on in there. Let me get a spoon. Let's gently put them in our pot so we don't mess up the pot. Hold on. So I had Gracie pick me up a little slide spoon here. And we're going to get these stones placed on in there nice and gentle. See it right there in the spoon? Yep. Sorry about that. Bump y'all. Yep, just slide them on in there. Try not to scratch up the old pot. And that. Yep. And like I said, you want to use one large one. That's all good and fine too. But I'm sure if you've got children or grandchildren, they'll go find you plenty of stones. So we got them on in there. And just in case you want to know, we got 6 of them on in there. Make it all the more flavorful, it will. So we got to get that fire going underneath it. And we're going to bring this water up to a nice simmer. And the next step will be to slip that chicken on in there and get it cooking up. Yep, that's the way we do it. You might say, well, you dump everything on in there, or you dump it all in a crock pot. I don't do that. Even though I'm a fan of Campbell's soup, I don't want everything coming out all sort of kind of mushy where it just dissolves in my mouth. So I drop things in the pot in stages. Yes, I do. So as soon as we get this to percolating, we'll come on back. Well, y'all, that water I think has finally come to a simmer. Yep, sure has. And now we've got to add in the next ingredient. And of course, this is one of Trixie's and them's favorite. I don't know if you can see that water just simmering away there. Sort of high simmer, low boil. And we're going to be laying in chicken leg quarters. We are. We're just going to lay them on in there. Yep, just like that. And you want to make sure you got enough water to cover. Let me give my hands a quick rinse, and I'll come back and show you. You see right there? We got just enough water in there. That water came up to high simmer, low boil. And what we did was we went ahead and slipped in 2 chicken leg quarters. Yes, we did. And we added a teaspoon of salt and half teaspoon of pure ground black pepper. We did. Now, if I wasn't sharing some of this chicken, Gracie, you knocked the broom over, with Gracie, Trixie, and the kitty crew, I would have dropped in some onion and some garlic at this point. But they love chicken, so I'll add that later, after this chicken's been cooking for about an hour. And I'll take it on out. I'll get her deboned, and I'll share some with the kitties. I'll set the rest aside to go back in the pot a little bit later. Well, y'all, you can hear the timer going off, can't you? Yep. It's been an hour. Woo, and this kitchen's already starting to smell good. I'm telling you what, now you might not believe it, but just when I got that water up to a nice little boil with those stones in there was an aroma as well. Sort of kind of sweet. Now with that chicken, a little salt and pepper, oh my Lord. But it's time to get this here chicken out and let it start resting and cooling so we can get it deboned, get it chopped up, and of course, I've got to share with the kitty crew. So, let me go get a plate, set of tongs, and we'll get that on out of there. So we got a plate, and we got our tongs. We're just going to take that chicken right on out of there. Yes, we are. Don't got to be cooked all the way slapped through. Nope, don't. Because we're going to chop it all up. You know, we'll give the skin and all that to the kitty crew as well. Yep. There we go. Look at that. Woo! That's good enough to eat right now. And what we're going to do now is set it on the counter, be cooling, so we can start chopping. Yep, sure are. I'll just set it right over here on the stove for a minute. And we got our broth there. Let me show it to you. You see that nice broth? Ooh, yeah. And while all this was going, we went ahead and utilized that time. We got our 5 small to medium potatoes all peeled and chopped up. They're like in little I would say 1/2-inch pieces. Yep, they sure are. Then we went ahead and peeled our carrots, chopped them up too. The smaller ones we left whole. Larger pieces we halved. Went ahead and peeled our onion, diced it up in 1/4-inch dice. And right on top of that, hope you can see it, is 4 cloves of fresh garlic, minced. And then about a heaping tablespoon of chopped ginger. Oh yeah. Now, I could go ahead if I was in a hurry and start dropping this on into that there fine chicken broth that I done made. But that would speed up the process. But what I found, don't quite give long enough time for that chicken to cool off where I can handle it. So I'm going to wait till the chicken cools on off. Get it all deboned and everything chopped on up. Then I'll set it aside. Then I'm going to start adding in my taters, my carrots, my onions, my garlic there, and my ginger. It's at that time we'll start adding in some spice and flavor. Oh yeah, we will. We'll be jazzing it up. This stone soup won't always even be fit for a king. It'll be fit for a queen too. Oh yeah. So, let's let the chicken cool off. And we'll be right back. Well, y'all, we went ahead and let our chicken cool for about 15-20 minutes. Got it all chopped up real nice there. That's a pile of chicken. Remember, that was just 2 leg quarters, which is 2 thighs, 2 drumsticks. That's minus what Gracie had, Trixie, and the kitty crew. That's plenty. So now what we got to do, we got to start adding in our vegetables. First up, it's going to be those taters. Got our taters right here. We're going to get them off in there. We're just going to ease them on in there. Hopefully, sort of, kind of. There we go. Get every last one of those right on in that pot. Yep. Give her a little quick stir. Flatten her out some. Now, we're going to go ahead and add in our other veggies. Our carrots. Right on in there. Our onions. Our garlic. And our ginger. Yep. Now, I ain't gonna put that chicken right back in right now. Nope. Or are we gonna add those green beans? Remember? Don't let me forget those green beans. So now it's time to get her seasoned on up. Because right now that broth only got salt and pepper in it. So the first thing we're gonna be adding is a little bit of poultry seasoning. Yes, sir. Right here we got it. We're going to put in a half teaspoon. Right there. Right there. And if you don't remember what poultry seasoning all has in it, it's got all the goodness for stuff like chicken. Oh yeah. It's got coriander, sage, thyme, allspice, marjoram, and white pepper. Oh yeah. It makes chicken all the more better. Then what we got to do is we got to get those celery seed on out here. See, like I was telling you, I'd normally use 2 stalks of celery. But I was a little slim on celery. So I'm going to take a half a teaspoon of this here celery seed, and I'm going to just place it on in the pot too. Now, since it's winter time and everything is nice and cool and crispy outside, and I get chilly being old, I'm going to add me in some crushed red pepper. Oh, it's just going to give it about just a little bit of heat. And I'm going to do a level, not label, half a teaspoon to start with. And all these are to start. Because I might come back at the end, taste it, and want to jazz it up a little bit more. That's why I'd rather put in a little too less than a little too much. Can't get it out of there once it goes in. And if you don't like a certain spice or herb, you might just want to put a touch in, right? And if it appeals to you, put in a little bit more. And now lastly, we're going to put some rosemary in there. And not that much. Rosemary is a pretty strong spice. Some people like it, some don't. I got a little grinder here. But I'm going to figure I'm going to put about, anywhere from 1/4 teaspoon to a half teaspoon of that in there too, because I don't mind rosemary. There we go. The spices are all in there. We're going to give it a little stir with our little wooden spoon we are. Yep. We're going to place the lid back on it. We're going to bring our heat up to about a 5. We're going to let it come to a boil, low boil, and then we'll cook it for another 10 to 15 minutes more. We'll come back, we'll check those taters and those carrots and see if they're fork tender. They're fork tender. Then we gotta get this chicken back on in there, and them green beans. We're getting close to the finish line now. Yeah, ooh, this house smelling fine. Wish it smelled this way all the time. Well, we've had those carrots and taters in there. Brought it up to a nice low boil. We surely did, as you can see maybe. So now we need to check them. Check to see what they're looking like. We're gonna fish one out. Take our official checker. Oh yeah, slides right on in there. Still holding its shape. So that's good. Now, we're ready to add back our chicken, which we got right here. We're just gonna start adding it on back in there. Oh yeah. Ain't hard. Want to make sure we get it off. Surely we do. Give that a stir on in there. Now, you might be wondering, well, what about those stewed tomatoes and mushrooms? Well, if you're familiar with stewed tomatoes, you already know they're cooked. And all we did was give them a little chop with a pastry cutter. We just use it, smash down through them, chop them up some. Since they're already cooked on up, we're going to add them on in right now. Yep, just like that. And lastly, or next to lastly, we got our button mushrooms. Now this was a 7-ounce can of whole button mushrooms. And we sliced them on up, we did. Oh, about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. And this is where people make a mistake with mushrooms. And this is regardless whether you use them canned or fresh. Mushrooms don't take real long to cook. No, they don't. So I leave them along with the stewed tomatoes for the very last. And see, those tomatoes, they were cut up by a pastry cutter. You know, I poured them out of the can into a bowl and just chopped them up with a pastry cutter. Works real fine. Yes, you could use your kitchen scissors or mess up the cutting board. I use pastry cutter. Now, lastly, we got to grab those green beans out of the freezer. Now what we got here is a quart freezer bag full of blanched green beans that were fresh, and then we blanched them and put them in this bag to freeze them. And we're just going to slide them on in there. About half, well, a little over half of that quart bag we are. Now, you could use fresh, but they'll have to cook a little longer. If you use canned, I would say wait to the very end to drop canned green beans in there, because they already sort of kind of mushy, and they'll be real mushy if you cook them too long. Let me show you. That's everything in the pot now. Let me show you how beautiful this is looking. Ooh, look at there. Look how beautiful that is. You got the greens, the reds, the chicken, onion, garlic, mushrooms, ooh, with ginger in there. Oh, potatoes, carrots. It is smelling fabuloso. Look how bright green those green beans are. Yep. To me, that's simply beautiful. I don't know about you, and I can't even begin to tell you how it smells. I'm so hungry. I could eat nails now. So all we're going to do is we're going to let this cook on up for another about 15-20 minutes. And then it's done. Time to get us a bowl. But I'm going to have to make me up some of my world famous pulled pork, Italian Parmesan, and garlic toast. Yep, sure am. It is world famous. Ain't nobody said they don't like it. So I'll get this going. Get that garlic bread going. And we'll come back and get her on and served on up. Show we what we got and give her a taste test. Okay? Oh, well, the timer's going off. Now, if you'll remember, the last thing we popped in the pot there to the old stone soup was we popped in some stewed tomatoes, some sliced up canned button mushrooms. Yes, we did. And then a little over a half a bag, quart size freezer bag of our very own homegrown garden fresh blanched frozen green beans we did. And we let that come up to a quick boil. And then we turned it down to a simmer. We set our timer for 15 minutes. Because those mushrooms don't take long. And the stewed tomatoes are already cooked. And the green beans, we don't want them to get mushy. No. And like through every step, we grab one and we check it out, make sure it's done the way we want it. So let me give this one a little green bean taste and make sure it's just right. Got a little bite to it. And that's just how I like it. And it's at this point that you want to check your seasoning. Make sure that's just right too. And for me, I can taste that. Salt and pepper. Poultry seasoning in it. Yep. Celery seed. And just a tad of warmth from that crushed red pepper. So I think I'm going to let her go right where she's at. And it is looking simply beautiful and smelling delicioso. I mean, just look at that. That's a pot full of beautiful goodness. Now, I will guarantee you this. You have never had stone soup so fine as this. So all we got left to do, serve us up a bowl and slap us a couple pieces of that there homemade pulled pork garlic bread on a plate. We're ready to give it a taste test. Okay? So, went and got us a bowl and a ladle. We're just going to reach on in here and dish us up some of this goodness. Yep. Now, be careful of those stones, okay? You don't want to be trying to eat them, all right? I know, that's what started this dish, but they were just for flavor. I mean, look at that. You see how beautiful that is? How colorful? And I wish you could smell it. Yep. And we're going to bring her on over to the counter, let her cool a bit, slap some garlic toast on the side, and then we'll come back and we'll do a taste test. I'll let you know just how it is. Now there it is. Look at that. Look at how beautiful it is. And we got this nice pulled pork, Italian Parmesan and garlic toasted bread. Yeah, they're hot dog buns. That's why it's pulled pork. But they are tasty. Now you might have caught it Or maybe you didn't. You might be saying now, well, what about that cabbage, Mr. Tom? Yep. Oh, Mr. Tom, in his rush to get this put together, video and everything, I forgot the cabbage. Oh, yeah, I surely did. Until I was ladling it up. And then it dawned on me, and I looked in the fridge, and sure enough, there it sat. But I also had another problem. Let me show you. Now, I've already taken that one nice sized bowl out of here. You see how full that pot is? Well, the pot was getting awful full. But that ain't what caused me to leave out the cabbage. I guess I could have put some in it, and I really meant to. Right there at the end, you know, with the mushrooms and the stewed tomatoes and the green beans. I surely did. And all I was going to do was chop it up, slide it on in there. But I forgot. But never fear. I can heat it up later. Chop me up some of that cabbage and drop her in there too while I'm heating her up. I can. Because you can see that made pot full. So Mr. Tom's going to be eating this for lunch and dinner for several days. And I'll probably put some in some containers and slip it back into the freezer, I will. But I think it's going to be fine all by itself. But it ain't about what goes in it. I hope you see that. It's actually what you have on hand. And it's a good way to clean out the refrigerator. Yep, get rid of things that are starting to go a little bit south. Or north, depending on what part of the country you're in. But we'll drop it on in there next time we heat it on up. Surely we will. Maybe not next time, but a couple times down the road. Make for a little bit of variety. But this is something great to do with your children, your grandchildren, or even if you're going to do a Saturday potluck get together or Sunday at the church. You know, some churches after church they start cooking and they have an afternoon meal, and it's great to have everybody just bring something and add it to the pot. Can you imagine how nice that would be? And you could add some corn, fresh corn, frozen corn, even canned. Yes, you could. Or some green peas. Like I said, that okra. Yep. Just about anything can go into a good pot of stone soup. But I do hope that you read the story about stone soup. Get the meaning. Hope you'll share it with your children and your grandchildren. And I hope you'll make up a pot of it too. And let me know if you enjoy it. Well, there's only one thing left to do, and that's give it a taste test and see if it's as yummy as it looks and smells. Because it sure looks yummy. So y'all, you can get me a nice spoonful here of it with all the colors in it. Yep. See it right there? I got some orange going on, some chicken, some red with the tomato and the onion, a little piece of green bean in there. Surely I do. Let's open up the chompers, see what it tastes like. Oh my. That's really yummy. Woo! Yep, green beans are just perfect. So are the mushrooms. They didn't dissolve. Potatoes are still holding their shape. Carrots, yep. And chicken. Just fabuloso. Yep. That ginger gives a little bit of warmth too. Sure does. So I'm going to sit down, enjoy my bowl of stone soup. And like I say, be careful of the stones. Make sure you sneak them on out of there, so none of the kids, the grandkids, swallow no stones, or break a tooth, or use well, and that. But, whew, that'll warm you up on a cold winter day. So flavorful, it'll just about slap your jeans off, it will. Yeah. So, I've shared the chicken and skin and all that with the kitty crew. And I wish I could film them for you, but they're fast asleep, all well fed. I should hold back on that next time I do a cooking video. Because they're all in their little secret places, fast asleep. So y'all, till old Mr. Tom sees you on the next video, y'all take care out there. Stay safe. God bless you, your family, friends, and loved ones. Till next we meet. Goodbye for now. Oh, that is really tasty. And I know that toast is too. Time to eat. Later, all.